Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're having an awesome week. Generation number 1 of my UJSSM is ready to go. It's fermented out, it's dry, and it is ready to be stripped so I can take some backset and start generation number 2. Hey guys, welcome to Still It. I'm Jesse, and this is the channel all about chasing the craft of home distillation and making it a legitimate hobby. So if that's what you're into, guys, if you dig that or craft spirits, have a think about subscribing. It'll be really cool to have you along for the ride. Alright guys, like I said at the start, this is my first generation of UJSSM. If you haven't seen the video for the first generation, it's probably worth watching that before this video. So I'll stick a card up top, you can check that out and then come back and watch this video afterwards. In any case guys, this took 6 days to ferment out for me, and I left it an extra day just to let things drop out a little bit. So the first thing I want to do, team, is get this racked from the bucket over into the keg, and I am going to rack it, not use the tap, because as you can see the tap is sitting way below the level of the corn, and I want to leave that corn bed left undisturbed. So I'm going to get onto racking this now. I'm going to be using a racking cane today. I actually find these really useful though. Basically they let you put this at a specific point you want rather than just having a flaccid hose flopping around in the bucket. Flaccid. Maybe picking up more corn than you want, or popping up the top and breaking the siphon. If you haven't seen these before or you don't know where to get them, most of your local homebrew shops will have it. If not, I'll put an Amazon link down below for you guys to check them out. Now, a beer guy would never suck on the end of this to start a siphon, but seeing as we're about to put it in there and boil it, what's the difference, right? I'm also straining this because the last thing I want is for one of those little bits of corn like that to get stuck in one of my electric elements and scorch. I'm not sure if everyone does this. From what I've read, some people have problems with it, some people don't, so I'm just going to do it. Obviously, if you're using steam heating or an external heat source, you probably don't need to worry about this so much. So I have siphoned down to here, and that is enough liquid in the boiler to turn the elements on. So I've got those heating up now, as you can probably hear. I want a bit more of that, so I am just going to use a scoop to pull it out. That's about as much liquid as I really need to get out of there, but you can probably notice too that there is sort of two different colors of corn. There's the darker stuff like this, and then the more yellow stuff underneath. As I'm scooping it out, I am saving the corn that I've taken out. The reason I'm saving this is so I can tell the amount of volume that I've taken out of here, and I'm going to replace that with new corn. This corn has only been in here for 1 generation, so I really don't need to replace that much. Some people only replace it every 2nd generation. I'm just going to take a little bit of the grey stuff out, and I think I'm satisfied with that. My still is all set up and ready to go. The boiler's heating up, so what I need to do now is pay a little attention to my fermenter. Essentially all we've done so far is taken out most of the liquid that we've fermented already and some of the corn. So what we're left with in here is a little bit of the fermented liquid, a majority of the corn, and a whole lot of super active yeast. You can almost think of that first fermentation as a giant starter. There's a whole lot of super active yeast sitting down the bottom here. Basically what yeast do is when they're feeding, when they're eating sugar, they're up in solution and kicking around so they can access that sugar. As the food source starts to run out, they flocculate, which basically means they fall out of solution down to the bottom. More often than not, when you've finished fermenting, you'll get that big creamy cake at the bottom, and that is mostly yeast. We love yeast. Yeast do all the work for us, so we want to look after this stuff. You want to make sure not to let them dry out, because we are going to be letting the still run for some time now, right? We want to keep them happy while we're running the still. So a lot of people say that they add some water back in now at this stage to make sure that doesn't happen. I don't know how people get it that dry in here. Like my yeast is pretty much, it's pretty much still submerged. Even the corn is pretty much still submerged. But I am going to put 2 liters of water back into this fermenter right now just to make sure. Make sure that that water is filtered, it's not full of chlorine, and it is not too hot for the yeast. Remember, we're treating these guys right. I just added 2 liters of water in here. It is not important the exact amount of water you add, but it is important to remember how much water you added. We'll get back to that later on, okay? This is also a really good time to remember to add the new corn back in. So I just went outside and measured out the corn that I'd collected when taking it out of here. And I ended up with 2.5 of these, which I'm going to put back in now. I just gave it to the chickens. I wonder what happens when chickens get drunk. And I wonder if they'll get drunk on the grain that was in here. I don't know, I don't have an answer to that. So I need 2.5 of these worth of corn. That's an arbitrary measurement. Just make sure that you replace what you took out. This is what we're left with at this stage, and we can't do anything more with this until we have the back set from the stripping run. And my still is starting to get warm, so it's time to go pay attention to that. I'll cover this up and we'll see it later on. The still's up to temperature, as you can see. I'm going to run it slow for a little while, even though this is a stripping run, just because I don't know whether this is a puking risk or not. I guess with all that corn in there could be, so I'm just going to run it slow for a little while, and then I'll crank it up. Just in case there are people new to the channel watching this video, I wanted to show you the whole still. I'm using a CCVM still that I built myself, and this is currently in pot still mode. It's sitting on top a 50-litre beer keg boiler that Andrew from English Hill Distillery hooked me up with. Thanks again, dude. While I got a sec, I also wanted to say a huge thank you to Uncle Jesse for 3 things. First up, thanks for creating a sweet-ass platform for people to learn how to do this sort of stuff. Second, thanks for pushing this recipe out for people to get to know, because I see a whole lot of people love it. And third, dude, thank you so much for the help you've given me in getting this right and making sure that I'm not a blithering idiot. I also want to say thanks to the people that commented and gave me feedback on last week's video. There was a bunch of you that mentioned that I was calling this a UJSM, which is incorrect. It is a UJSSM. Also, sorry for the confusion about the Jesse thing. That's not me, not my recipe, totally different guy. Cameron Wright asked, hey man, where did you get the kibbled rye in New Zealand? Is it just stock feed? Also, I'd love to see you do an all grain bourbon or rye without using any liquid enzymes. Dude, throwing down the gauntlet. Yes, I would love to do that, and there's also been a whole bunch of people asking to see this done basically without sugar and with enzymes. Yes to both, I would love to do that. I think I'm going to let it run like this for a couple of generations just to see what it's capable of doing, and then after that, maybe I'll switch. As for the kibbled maize, yes dude, it is stock feed, and if you guys are in New Zealand, I know getting your hands on this sort of stuff can be a little bit tricky. I am using kibbled maize from Farmlands, and it was roughly $27 for 25 kilos, I think. From what I hear, you can get it a whole lot cheaper in America. Someone who knows about that, if you could comment down below and let the other people in America know where you get it from and how much it costs, that'd be awesome. One of the things that Uncle Jesse was sure to point out to me about this first distillation, about distilling generation number 1, is that basically you're just collecting faints and creating backwash for generation number 2. Backwashed. Backset! So I'm not collecting this in separate jars to make cuts or anything like that. I'm just treating it purely as a stripping run. And like I said, I am going to crank this up pretty soon as well. But what I do want to do is take a sample from each stripping run as I go through the generations, so I can go back and compare them to each other later on. Honestly, I'm a bit of a newbie when it comes to bourbon or American whiskey, and I'm not even sure if I know what the flavor difference is between a sour mash or a standard mash. So for me, I think that's going to be really interesting to see how the flavor profile changes through the generations and see what my preference is in terms of flavors and what generation and amount of backset works best for me. In an attempt to make these samples somewhat comparable to each other, I am going to take 2 liters off the still and then take a 200 ml sample, and that's what I'll do every run for the next few generations at least. I've got my little sample off the still. I took significantly less in the end. I don't need that much. The still's doing its thing. Everything's happy over there. So we need to figure out what we're going to do with that back set as soon as it's ready to go. Essentially what we want to do is create exactly what we created last week, except with backset instead of some of the water. If you're not sure about this recipe, go back and check out the first UJSSM video, which I linked at the beginning of this video, And this will make a whole lot more sense if it doesn't now. Anyway, this is the original recipe. 25 litres of water, 4.2 kilos of sugar, 4.2 kilos of cracked corn, and 25 grams of yeast. We already know that we've got the yeast sitting in our fermenter ready to go, and we've already sorted out the corn, which leaves us with the sugar and the water to deal with. The sugar's pretty easy. We're just going to add another 4.2 kilos, so we don't really have to worry about that. This is the bit that we need to work out now. So all up, we want 25 litres of liquid. Seeing as this is a sour mash, we're going to be using some of the back set from this run to use for the next generation. Traditionally, you're supposed to use at least 25%, and I've seen recommendations to not go over 50%. Personally, I'm going to start with 30% and see how I like that. 30% of 25 litres is 7.5 litres, and that's how much back set I'm going to use. So we need 25 litres of liquid, we're using 7.5 litres of back set, and we've already added 2 litres to the fermenter, which means we need 15.5 litres of fresh filtered water to add to this as well. At the end of the day, this is probably way too accurate and theoretical to bother with. It seems like most people either use their fermenter as a volume gauge, add the sugar to the back set, add the back set in once it's cool enough, and then top it up to a mark that they know is about right. Or I've got a pro tip from one of the guys on NZ Home Distiller as well, and he says he uses his hydrometer to top it up to about 1064, and that's when he knows he's got the right volume as well. Up to you guys, depends how pedantic and accurate you really want to be. But I think seeing all of this, if you haven't used this recipe before or seen it before, gives you a pretty good understanding of what's going on. I've just turned the still off. This is the last little jar that I've collected. This is down to 10%. So I collected fairly low, and like I said before, this entire run I'm basically treating as faints, or I guess more accurately low wines. I'm going to hang on to this until I've got another probably 2 runs worth, and then run all of that together as a spirit run. So now it is time to mix up my second generation of UJSSM, and the first thing I want to do is to dissolve the sugar. Luckily I've got a whole lot of lovely hot back set in the boiler now ready to go. Why waste energy? We're going to use that to dissolve the sugar nice and easily. So back set is literally just what is left in the boiler after a run. Like we said earlier, I need 7.5 litres of this to make up 30% of my total liquid volume. Someone is inevitably going to ask, is this stuff sour? And the answer is yes, it really is. It's not like vinegar or anything like that, but it is definitely noticeably sour. And it tastes something along the lines of old beer mixed with cream corn, if you really want to know. The plan now is to use this lovely hot back set to dissolve the sugar nice and easily. Once I've done that, I'm going to split it into 2 pots and use some of that 15.5 litres of water to cool it all back down closer to a temperature that's safe to put into the fermenter that won't hurt the yeast. So I've split it into 2 pots just to give myself a bit more volume to work with, and it looks like both of them, I've got these both sitting a touch under 30 degrees, so I'm happy to throw those into the fermenter now. Now I want to top it up to my full volume with water, making sure to keep it sort of fairly close to my fermenting temperature as I do so. So this is generation 2 of the UJSSM, and this is the first sour mash because it is the first one with back set in it. From now on in, every generation is going to be treated pretty much exactly the same. Let it ferment out until it's nice and dry and activity stopped. Siphon the liquid out, replace as much of the spent corn as you think you need to. A general guide is to replace the grey stuff or the stuff that doesn't look vibrant in colour anymore. Distill the contents of the ferment, and then use the back set from that to create the next generation of fermentation. And then use the back set from that to create the next generation. So thanks a bunch, guys. I can't wait to get this one in the still as well. I really can't wait to get the third one in the still, because that'll mean I'll be able to do a spirit run finally. In any case, guys, thanks a bunch for watching the video. Thanks for hanging out. I really appreciate all the comments and help, guys, and I'm sure the other newbies that are watching this do as well. I'll catch you guys next time. Have an awesome week. See ya.